Turtles! Ha! I know turtles!" he proceeded with real triumph. "Why, that's the first word I've recognized in all this what I've been reading." "Sure I know turtles," he reiterated with increasing conviction. "Why, sure! Those slow crawling, box like affairs that live in the mud and are used for soup and combs," he continued blithely. "The very same," nodded little Eve Edgarton soberly. "Oh, Lordy!" groaned her father from the window. "Oh, this is going to be lots better," beamed Barton, "now that I know what it's all about." "For goodness sake," growled Edgarton from his table, "how do you people think I'm going to do any work with all this jabbering going on?" Hesitatingly for a moment Barton glanced back over his shoulder at Edgarton and then turned round again to probe Eve's preferences in the matter. As sluggishly determinate as two black turtles trailing along a white sand beach, her great dark eyes in her little pale face seemed headed suddenly toward some far away idea. "Oh, go right on reading, Mr. Barton," nodded little Eve Edgarton. "Three superfamilies of turtles," began Barton all over again. "Three superfamilies of turtles. The Amphichylidae, the Cryptodira, and the the Trionychoidea," he spelled out laboriously. With a vicious jerk of his chair Edgarton snatched up his papers and his orchids and started for the door. "When you people get all through this nonsense," he announced, "maybe you'll be kind enough to let me know. I shall be in the writing room." With satirical courtesy he bowed first to Eve, then to Barton, dallied an instant on the threshold to repeat both bows, and went out, slamming the door behind him. "A nervous man, isn't he?" suggested Barton. Gravely little Eve Edgarton considered thought. "Trionychoidea," she prompted quite irrelevantly. "Oh, yes, of course," conceded Barton. "But do you mind if I smoke?" "No, I don't mind if you smoke," sing-songed the girl. With a palpable sigh of relief Barton lighted a cigarette. "You're nice," he said. "I like you." Conscientiously then he resumed his reading. "No Pleurodira have yet been found," he began. "Yes, isn't that too bad?" sighed little Eve Edgarton. "It doesn't matter personally to me," admitted Barton. Hastily he moved on to the next sentence. "The Amphichylidae are known there by only the genus Baena," he read. "Two described species, B. undata and B. arenosa, to which was added B. herbracea and B. ponderosa." Petulantly he slammed the whole handful of papers to the floor. "Eve," he stammered, "I can't stand it. I tell you I just can't stand it. Take my attic if you want to, or my cellar, or my garage, or anything else of mine in the world that you have any fancy for, but for heaven's sake—" With extraordinarily dilated eyes Eve Edgarton stared out at him from her white pillows. "Why? Why, if it makes you feel like that just to read it," she reproached him mournfully, "how do you suppose it makes me feel to have to write it? All you have to do is to read it," she said, "but I have to write it." "But why do you have to write it?" gasped Barton. Languidly her heavy lashes shadowed down across her cheeks again. "It's for the British Consul at Nunko Nono," she said. "It's some notes he asked me to make for him in London this last spring." "But for mercy's sake, do you like to write things like that?" insisted Barton. "Oh, no," drawled little Eve Edgarton. "But of course if I marry him," she confided without the slightest flicker of emotion, "it's what I'll have to write all the rest of my life." "But," stammered Barton, "for mercy's sake, do you want to marry him?" he asked quite bluntly. "Oh, no," drawled little Eve Edgarton. Impatiently Barton threw away his half-smoked cigarette and lighted a fresh one. "Then why?" he demanded. "Oh, it's something Father invented," said little Eve Edgarton. Altogether emphatically Barton pushed back his chair. "Well, I call it a shame," he said, "for a nice live little girl like you to be packed off like so much baggage to marry some great gray bearded clout who hasn't got an idea in his head except" squintingly he stared down at the scattered sheets on the floor. "Except Amphichelydia," he asserted with some feeling. "Yes, isn't it?" sighed little Eve Edgarton. "For heaven's sake," said Barton, "where is Nunca Nono?" "Nunca Nono?" whispered little Eve Edgarton. "Where is it? Why, it's an island in an ocean, you know. Rather a hot green island in rather a hot blue green ocean. Lots of green palms, you know, and rank rough green grass, and green bugs, and green butterflies, and green snakes. And a great crawling, crunching collar of white sand and hermit crabs all around it. And then just a long, unbroken line of turquoise colored waves, and then more turquoise colored waves, and then more turquoise colored waves, and then more turquoise colored waves, and then and then what?" worried Barton. With a vaguely astonished lift of the eyebrows little Eve Edgarton met both question and questioner perfectly squarely. "Why, then more turquoise colored waves, of course," chanted little Eve Edgarton. "It sounds rotten to me," confided Barton. "It is," said little Eve Edgarton. "And oh, I forgot to tell you. John Ellbertson is sort of green, too. Geologists are apt to be, don't you think so?" "I never saw one," admitted Barton without shame. "If you'd like me to," said Eve, "I'll show you how the turquoise colored waves sound when they strike the hermit crabs." "Do!" urged Barton. Listlessly the girl pushed back into her pillow, slid down a little farther into her blankets, and closed her eyes. She began. "Mm, wish. Wish. After a while, of course, I think you might stop," suggested Barton a bit creepishly. Again the big eyes opened at him with distinct surprise. "Why," said Eve Edgarton, "it never stops." "Oh, I say," frowned Barton, "I do feel awfully badly about your going off to a place like that to live. Really," he stammered. "We're going Thursday," said little Eve Edgarton. "Thursday!" cried Barton. For some inexplainable reason the whole idea struck him suddenly as offensive, distinctly offensive, as if Fate, the impatient waiter, had snatched away a yet untasted plate. "Why, Eve!" he protested. "Why, we're only just beginning to get acquainted." "Yes, I know it," mused little Eve Edgarton. "Why, if we'd have had half a chance " began Barton, and then didn't know at all how to finish it. "Why, you're so plucky and so odd and so interesting," he began all over again. "Oh, of course I'm an awful duffer and all that. But if we'd had half a chance, I say, you and I would have been great pals in another fortnight." "Even so," murmured little Eve Edgarton, "there are yet 52 hours before I go." "What are 52 hours?" laughed Barton. Listlessly, like a wilting flower, little Eve Edgarton slid down a trifle farther into her pillows. "If you'd have an early supper," she whispered, "and then come right up here afterward, why, there would be 2 or 3 hours. And then to morrow, if you get up quite early, there would be a long, long morning. And we could get acquainted some," she insisted. "Why, Eve," said Barton, "do you really mean that you would like to be friends with me?" "Yes, I do," nodded the crown of the white bandaged head. "But I'm so stupid," confided Barton with astonishing humility. "All these botany things and geology and " "Yes, I know it," mumbled little Eve Edgarton. "That's what makes you so restful." "What?" queried Barton a bit sharply. Then very absent-mindedly for a moment he sat staring off into space through a gray pungent haze of cigarette smoke. "Eve," he ventured at last. "What?" mumbled little Eve Edgarton. "Nothing," said Barton. "Mr. Jim Barton," ventured Eve. "What?" asked Barton. "Nothing," mumbled little Eve Edgarton. Out of some emotional or purely social tensities of life it seems rather that time strikes the clock than that anything so small as a clock should dare strike the time. One